Good evening. I'd like to call the Public Works Board meeting for June 13th, 2017 to order. May I have the roll call, please?
Ms. Schmidt? Here. Mr. Pickard?
Here.
Mr. Lehrer?
Here.
Mr. Temperley?
Here.
Mr. Reich is not here at this moment. And Mrs. Wolf had previously informed us she would be absent this evening.
Okay, thank you. This is the annual reorganization meeting. Therefore, we must elect Executive Council, the Vice President and President. Do I have any nominations for the Public Works Board President?
I'd like to nominate Ms. Schmidt.
I don't think city council members can serve as president.
They cannot.
You cannot?
Correct.
Okay.
Do you not want it?
Would you?
I'm usually gone a lot, but
Do I have any other nominations?
I guess that's a nomination. All right.
All right. I'd like to nominate Todd Temperley.
Do I have any other nominations? Do I have any other nominations?
No.
One more time, do I have any other nominations? Okay, then in that circumstance, if there are no other nominations, I'd entertain a motion to close nominations and unanimously elect Mr. Temperley as the President of the Public Works Board.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Can we have a roll call, please?
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Lehrer?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you, Mr. Temperley. The floor is yours.
I thought there was a motion to close the nominations.
That was the motion, to close and unanimously
Oh,
elect.
all right. Let me scooch over. Thank you, everybody. At this time, I'll entertain a motion, or I'll entertain nominations for the vice president.
Nominate Mr. Pickard.
Any other nominations? All right, I'll entertain a motion to close the nominations and also to elect Mark Pickard as vice president.
So moved.
Second?
Want to take a roll call vote?
Mr. Lehrer?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Item 5, correction and or approval of the minutes of April 11th, 2017 and May 9th, 2017. Or entertain a motion to either correct the minutes or to approve.
On the April 11th, under AMI, it says secure CA for election portion. Is that right, election portion?
Electric, should be electric.
That's
Didn't
what I
see that,
thought
thank
maybe.
you.
So, little correction.
As it relates to approving the minutes, I wasn't present for the April 11th one, so we'll probably have to do them separately.
I don't think I was here either. Is there enough? To be honest, we've been kind of loose with that rule. So,
If we only have 2 votes, I don't think that we can pass the acceptance of those minutes. I think we need a majority.
yeah.
So, do we
Yep.
have the same issue for the previous meeting as the other one is in May, is that correct?
Yeah, I wasn't there either.
But Vicki, you were there for that one.
Yeah,
So we
May
do
should
have
be
3
okay.
city members for the May 9th meeting. Well, then let's address those minutes. In the meantime,
There was-
Actually, I was here for the April 11th.
Yep.
All right.
All right. So it's entertain a motion to approve the April 11th minutes
As correct.
as corrected.
as corrected.
So moved.
Seconded.
All in favor, say aye.
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 You can say aye too, right?
Yeah, I did, I'm
Oh, okay.
sorry.
We're good.
Yeah. All right. I'll entertain a motion to either correct and approve the May 9th minutes.
Motion to approve?
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
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 I guess I should have did a roll call vote on that.
No, well,
That was effective.
Yeah,
Yeah.
all righty. Item 6, questions and public comment. Seeing that I only see staff out there, I guess there's no one here for questions and public comment. Item 7, discussion recommendation on wastewater treatment plant compliance maintenance annual report. This is where we go over a grade sheet, go over how well we're handling the wastewater treatment plant before we send it to the council. So, Mr.
Yeah, I
Howard.
just got two quick comments, and I'll have Bill Kiesling come up and talk a little bit about the report. The first comment is, as you go through it, it's all A's. So, once again, it's pretty clear that Bill and his crew are doing a very good job over there. And Bill can go again through some of the highlights. The other thing I will mention is that this report has to be approved by the council as part of the DNR process. So I just let you know tonight, your recommendation will go to the council at the June 20th meeting, I believe. So I just want you to understand the timing and that we need to get a recommendation from the committee on this one. So, Bill?
Good evening. I think most of you know me, but for anybody at home that doesn't, I'm Bill Kiesling. I am your wastewater foreman for the Lake Mills Wastewater Treatment Plant. And I'm going to kind of go through the compliance maintenance annual report for 2016, as Paul said. Again, the report's required by June 30th each year. All publicly owned treatment works have to do this report. And basically, it's a self-audit or an evaluation of how we're doing, and the report is graded. I'm sure you've all had an opportunity to look at it, and I'm happy to report it's a good grade this year. So yeah, it's another snooze fest, and I'm okay with that. The report's divided into 10 sections. There's influent flow and loading. There's effluent quality and plant performance as it relates to BOD, total suspended solids, ammonia, and phosphorus. There's biosolids, or as we call it, sludge management, what we do with the byproducts, staffing and preventive maintenance, operator certification and education, financial management, and the sanitary sewer collection systems. The two remaining pages are the grading summary and the resolution. If you look at section 1, influent float and loading, on page 1, if you look in the middle of the first page, you'll see that the DNR uses a design of 1,856 pounds per day, and they use 90% of that for kind of a benchmark for grading, and we exceeded that 2 times this past year. Compared to 2015, we exceeded it 8 times. So that's good. That's down a little bit. We exceeded our 100% design 1 time. This happened during January and February. And I think it's largely attributed to some kind of catastrophic equipment failure we had with our process. We had to take half of our process down in the middle of winter, combine that all into one oxidation ditch. So we took basically 1.6 million gallons of fluid capacity and cut it down by half. So 800,000. And so that caused some flow problems and things like that. But we made it through it, and we didn't get gigged on it, so it's not a big deal. We violated maybe a weekly limit or something. Section 2, effluent BOD, we had no exceedances, as I said. Same for section 3, TSS, section 4, effluent ammonia, again good. Basically the whole report's good if you had a chance to look at it. Section 9 is a financial section. Betsy does that. And if you looked at the report, that section looks a little different this year. It's a little longer. The DNR started to look at things like our power usage and what we're using to do that treatment. So chances are, who knows, maybe something down the line will come of it, but maybe they're just trying to get us to keep an eye on how much power we're using and try to cut costs. Section 10 is the sanitary sewer collection system. This year there was a new requirement there, CMOM, the Capacity Management Operations and Maintenance acronym. Basically, they required us to have a written process or procedure we follow and kind of keep more track of what we're doing out in the collection system as far as sanitary sewer overflows and maintenance and televising of sewers and things like that. I guess in 2015 we had 9 A's and 1 C. So, we had some of those industrial problems plaguing us, and we've cleaned a lot of that up, and things are better. So in 2016, I guess to close, I think some of the things that the city's done as far as lining sewers, the water department heavily pursuing leaks, I think, and finding leaks that might infiltrate the sanitary sewer and things like that is possibly starting to pay off. Maybe some of it's due to low flush appliances, but in the previous year, 2015, our average daily flow was 0.874 million gallons, and last year it was 0.815, which are fairly close, but the rainfall last year was about 5 inches higher than average. So we had about 40 inches of rain last year, and the flow was down a little bit, so that might suggest that we're getting less of that rain into the sanitary sewers, which is a good thing. So I guess that's about what I've got to tell you tonight, other than the report looks good. I don't know if anybody's got any questions for me.
Anybody?
The only comment I was going to go along was agreeing with Amy Gar, where I was looking for more measurable goals for the future part.
Right.
It was ironic that she's there as well, but her and I actually share a similar attitude towards those measurable goals. That's about the only
Yep.
suggestion I had for future.
Yeah, and she and I have discussed it, and Paul and I have discussed it, and we're developing some more measurable goals. What, I guess basically, what percentage of.
And it
things
could be as simple as just taking what you have as more to just say, give me one more or one less complaint, one more inspection, just to give it a physical number instead of just more or less.
Right.
That's all.
Yeah. Yep. And we've discussed that, and that's what we're going to do. So obviously you've read it if you saw that buried in there, so. To your credit. I don't know if there's anything else anybody has.
Nope, get OAs, it's pretty uneventful and
Yeah.
nothing to get worked up about.
Last year was not as good because of the reasons we know about with inflow, and it looks like that's maybe not, what I've heard is it's maybe not 100% under control, but it's way, way better.
Correct, yeah. Things look pretty good. We're still getting small glitches and little things going on that maybe don't thrill us, but overall, the treatment's pretty good.
Yeah.
Yep, at this point.
So I'd like to thank and commend you and your staff on doing such a good job getting all these very nice reports, or obviously doing a good job, and I think the last year or so was kind of a tougher year and took some extra effort to get where we are this year, so thank you.
I'll pass that on to the guys, and they'll appreciate it. Thank
Yeah,
you.
you were pretty down at that meeting, as I recall, too, so smile.
Well, if you're a wastewater operator and your plant's not working, right, it's really frustrating.
Right.
Yeah, you take it personal. So, yep. Things are better.
All right.
I'll just put in one other plug and one other comment. Kevin Hopkins here has been involved with us a lot to go after some of these issues we're having. And we also have, and I'm talking about Bill and Kevin, worked hard on getting the permitting process working a little better, so that we are talking to folks about what they're sending our way, and that's making a difference too. So I just include Kevin into the kudos here. It's things are getting better, no doubt about it.
Any other questions or comments? We have a nicely prepared motion, 17-6-1, authorizing the city manager and staff to submit the Lake Mills wastewater treatment plant compliance maintenance and a report to Lake Mills City Council for final resolution. I'll entertain a motion to either approve or deny the motion.
I move approval of motion 1761.
I'd second that.
Okay. Heather, we take the vote?
Mr. Temperley,
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt,
Aye.
Mr. Pickard,
Aye.
Mr. Lehrer,
Aye.
motion passed 4-0.
Okay, item 8, discussion recommendation on sewer user charge adjustment, which seems to be a polite word for increase. So this is something that we know it's been coming. We've got issues, obviously South Main. People are just buying more water efficient appliances. So Paul, I'll let you start the discussion.
Sure, thanks. And your comments are exactly what Kevin's going to talk about, just give you a little more detail. I'm going to put this up quick. It's not in your packet, but these are summary conclusions that came from a report that we had Ellers do for us in 2015 that kind of put together a several-year plan as to what we should expect for adjustments because of the projects that are coming up. We'll talk a little bit more about this, later in this particular discussion, but then also in the AMI discussion. We're not exactly on target with these numbers per year. In other words, we're not following the per year exactly, but I think it's working out to the overall impact is going to be quite similar. And so I just want to make sure you understand that we're still using this report as a bit of a guideline and really getting prepared for the construction projects we've got coming up in the very near future now here. So with that, then I will turn it over to Kevin. Kevin is an engineer with Strand and Associates, worked very closely with us on wastewater treatment projects, and he's actually the one that put together the financials on this. So Kevin, if you want to go through this, please.
Sure. We're going to go through a handful of tables that were in the report that we submitted last week. Starting with Table 1, this is just your existing rates. We last updated the rates in 2007, so it's been a while, to say the least. Basically, you've got monthly meter charge, volume charge, $6.28 per 1,000 gallons. Surcharges, which are applied to high-strength waste from industries or whoever may be discharging a high-strength waste. Those aren't used a lot, but they probably will be more in the future. And then the miscellaneous charges are holding tank and septage costs or dumping fees per 1,000 gallons. And you're not really using these right now because you're not accepting those wastes at the treatment plant. So the next table is Table 2, and basically we look at this on a cash basis, what you need to spend or what you're going to spend in a year versus what you're going to collect. And we need to know the number of connections or customers, basically, and we break it down by residential, commercial, industrial, public authority, and other users. This just gives you a summary of the number of users and the total volume in sales in 2015 and the total revenue collected in 2015, which is around $1.5 million. So one of the first budgets we look at, and there's a lot of numbers here, and I don't expect you to read them all, but is just the operation and maintenance, or O&M budget. Basically what it costs to run the plant on a day-to-day basis throughout the year. What we did was we took the actual 2016 budget, and inflated that by about 1.5% just to get us to this month, basically June 2017. Normally we'd inflate things at about 3% per year, so we just took it at a half a year. So our test year actually starts now, essentially. So the total O&M budget is around $1.14 million. Another item that's in the budget, these are capital improvement projects that started last year and are projected to go through 2020. The cumulative total down in the lower right corner is $3.844 million for those 6, 7, 8 projects, I guess. The idea is that these projects would be funded through the sewer charges over the course of 10 years. So we're basically taking that $3.8 million, dividing it by 10. So we need to fund roughly $384,000 per year to help fund these projects. Next table is just a summary of the budget that we used to come up with the rates, including the O&M budget that just showed you. The replacement line item is replacement, equipment replacement costs. The DNR, as part of the Clean Water Fund Loan Program, requires you to put so many dollars away per year to help replace equipment that has a lifetime less than 20 years. So if a pump has a 15-year life and it costs, let's just say $60,000, we just divide that by 15 and come up with $4,000 per year. So that becomes part of that replacement fund. And there's a number of equipment items that are included in the replacement fund. The other item is debt service. That's just principal and interest payments on your existing debt. That's actually gone down quite a bit. So that this is the remaining debt service for 2017. Operating reserve, you're not required to have that, but it's just listed there. And then the capital improvement costs, it's from the table I just showed you, at $384,000 per year. So the total revenue requirements starting basically this month or next month is $1.73 million.
Kevin, real quick, before that replacement fund, that's more than we'd put in previous years, is that correct?
Yes, I think previous years was 62,000. Is that
40-some.
40s? Okay. And you actually use that replacement fund for a project that was done in 2013. There was a lot of equipment replacement and repair. So the city used a good portion of that fund to help pay for that project. So it's good to have this money in the bank, if you will, or in this fund, just so that you can finance these projects in the future.
Yeah, and I mention that, or bring that up for two reasons. One is it's a significant increase from past years, and the other thing is, of course, our plant is getting old. And so we're at that 20-plus year mark where more and more things are going to start to break. So having that fund in place is extremely important.
So like if we replaced a lift station, which we've been doing periodically, that's got a pump in it, of course, is that part of this, would that be funded by this replacement fund, or?
The equipment itself would. The actual structure, the concrete is not included in that replacement fund.
So the equipment for a lift service upgrade in the past, was it funded from a replacement fund or just by a general or incoming revenue or something like that?
Some of both, actually.
Right. So it's just another way, it's just kind of accounting, this is, you can fund replacement just by, your income, but it's this more or less just a way of budgeting for it and planning for it.
Absolutely, and actually, the next time you have a project at the plant that you want to fund through a clean water fund loan, I mean, you have to have this anyways.
Right. It's kind of a requirement. And it's
It's-
kind of,
it's-
they're
it's a
saying.
good idea.
You need to plan for this, and this is just budget for it, because you're going to need to do it, and it's not necessarily that we're going to spend more or less on replacement, it's just that we're accounting for it better.
Correct.
Okay.
The next slide is table 7, excuse me. This is just basically taking those the customer numbers, we break it down into equivalent meters, projected flow per category, our projected BOD, total suspended solids and phosphorus, and that's based on historical data from the plant. And we use these numbers to help allocate the costs. I'm not going to go into the kind of the meat of I mean, I've got the tables if you want to look at them, but the actual allocation is somewhat tedious, but I'll kind of get to the bottom line here in a second. So these are the rates that we ended up coming up with. And in general, the meters, the monthly meter charge goes up anywhere from 12 to 14%, 12% for most residents. The volume charge went up 14% from what is currently in place, and the surcharge rates went up 12 to 13%. We didn't look at if you just slide that.
Oh, I missed it.
On the bottom, there's the miscellaneous rates. Because you're not using you're not accepting septic or holding tank waste, we didn't bother adjusting those costs. And these, actually, I think these costs are fairly high, so most haulers probably wouldn't want to come to your plant anyways, so those are the rates that we're proposing. Next table is just the projected revenue based on those rates, the number of customers that we showed you in previous tables, and we're anticipating a little bit of surcharge revenue, but not a lot. I suspect as we get these industries, we meter and monitor these industries more, that number's going to increase. But this is just basically a check on our calculations showing that we're projected to collect enough revenue to meet the requirements. And the DNR in the past has required you to look at, to calculate a debt coverage ratio. And the minimum requirement has been 1.25, and we're looking at about 1.37 based on the projected revenue. So we're in good shape as far as that's concerned. And then the last table I have is just to give you an idea what the rates are, the impact are on residents and commercial industrial users. So this table is going to be a little hard to read, but you've got a copy in your packet. So I'm just going to pick for a residential user that uses 50,000 gallons per year on average. Right now, they're paying a total of about $480 per year. With the 13% increase, we're looking at about $545 per year, which is basically going from $40 per month to $45 per month, which is, yes, it's an increase, but it, you know, the rates haven't been increased in almost 10 years. There's a study that was done in 2016. Most communities typically would want to raise their rates about 4% per year. So if you did that, that would, over 10 years, that would equate to about a 48% increase. So while this is a big jump in a single year, it's, over the long haul, it's fairly minimal. And we think it's fair. I mean, if you compare this to, say, cable bill or satellite or phone bill, you know, it's pretty manageable.
How long do you think, if this rate does get approved, how long do you think this could hold before the next one, assuming there's no big disaster? Another 10 years then? Or?
Yeah, I wouldn't recommend going another 10 years.
Yeah. Well, if you're paying it, yeah, it'd be a good recommendation, but, I mean, as a consumer,
Yeah,
zero.
as a consumer, it's
Yeah.
great. But, I mean, that, a big driving force here was the capital improvements projects, and, you know, that, although you're paying for that over 10 years, the project horizon is 5 years, so I guess, I mean, a lot of communities will look at their rates every 2 to 3 years. I'm not necessarily suggesting that here, because you've gotten by with a lot longer period, but certainly within 5 years, consider it.
I'd make two comments in that regard, and Kevin alluded to one. Well, the first one is, never try to pin down an engineer on specifics. It just, that's how they make money, by not being specific. But, the second thing is, we are in the next, you know, through 2019, in an incredible capital improvement time. And as we've discussed internally, that's got to fade out here a little bit. We can't afford to stay at that level. And so I agree with Kevin that as we get through these capital improvement programs, take another look. I would certainly hope the next one we look at wouldn't be in double digit, but I think we owe it, you know, to ourselves and to the community to not let it go 10 years and then have a big one. So if we can look at smaller increases on a regular basis, that's probably more effective for everybody. I'd like to just add two quick on the cost comparisons. I did find some information about some of the other communities in Jefferson County, and we're right smack dab in the middle, basically. It goes from a high of, using the same criteria, the same usage, that sort of thing, about $47 a month in the Ixonia area to, I think, a low of, just under $45, $44.91 in Waterloo. You know, so we're kind of in the middle of that. The other thing I would add here, and it's very interesting, that different communities use drastically different methods to recoup their costs, and, you know, maybe Ian, you're quite well aware of that. I think in Jefferson, it's based on the size of the house, if I remember right. How many bedrooms you have is how much you pay per month. And then I believe in Watertown, they've opted to have a higher fixed charge and a lower volume charge. So there's, you know, just like on the electric side, you know, there's different attitudes, different theories as to how to come up with your revenue. And, you know, I'm sure part of Kevin's analysis was to see what works best for Lake Mills. I wanted you to understand that on a comparative basis in Jefferson County, we're very competitive.
I'm glad you at least spoke about the different ways of talking about how to manage it. To your point, there are different ways of doing it. No matter which way you slice it, it's always going to be different. You're kind of just choosing whichever one's going to be probably the most accurate in the long term. I do agree that doing it more frequently at a smaller increase is the way to go. It'll open yourself up for more heartburn, because $4, $5, and $6 a month is still going to be something that you'll more than likely get questioned on. But in general, that's not it's still in the double-digit percentages, but it's acceptable for what it needs to be. I agree with the capital changes. The only other, the urge was to push it towards more of a higher fixed and lower variable, because wastewater treatment plants typically have a higher fixed regardless of the amount of influent. But that has to do more with motivation behind what the community is doing. So if they're doing it for water savings and sewage savings, then it just depends on what your motivation is and what you're trying to urge the customers to do. So if you wanted to urge the customers to have less, then flip-flop what I'm saying and have a lower fixed and a higher variable, and you can start to see lower coming into it. Just trying to urge you to look at playing the market and being that kind of open-minded towards it.
Absolutely, point well taken, and certainly that's the same attitude when looking at the water rates and the electric rates. What's going to send the price signal that, what do you want to accomplish with it?
I myself, I've heard the argument that in order to be fair, you should allocate the fixed charge to the fixed cost and the variable charge to variable cost, but I think it's important to send the pricing signal to the customer that provides a incentive to do something that's valuable for everybody as a whole, and that's to not go overboard on usage, because one of the things, for example, in electric, usage goes up, then you have to build a new power plant. Those are expensive. Well, yeah, it's a fixed cost, but if that usage hadn't gone up, you wouldn't have to pay that additional thing that ends up being a fixed cost. So I think it's my opinion, and it's, different people can have different opinions. My thought is fixed rates relatively low, definitely lower than the fixed costs.
I'm with Mark. In fact, I thought I heard this year that plant expansion is put on hold because we're more, efficient in using water. Did I hear that correctly sometime in a previous meeting?
Yes, I
Yeah.
would say that that's partially true. We're more efficient. Generally speaking, appliances are more efficient, use less water. And in our case, we couple that with finding our leaks,
Right.
and yeah, we're doing some good there.
10 years ago, we were talking about adding that third oxidation disc
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Right, yeah.
And because of all this conservation, we did not have to spend millions of dollars to do that.
Right.
And that benefits everybody,
Agreed.
even though those appliances cost more, and maybe that toilet doesn't flush as well, but, there's a big benefit in it.
Absolutely. Very good.
Any more questions or comments? No?
Have you solicited feedback from industry and large commercial users as well, or is this relatively preliminary with just us?
It's preliminary. When, obviously, hopefully, this will get some press, and we will be contacting the larger users. Obviously, we'll put together a press release. We had planned to try to implement the rates at the beginning of July, but timing isn't going to allow that. So we will get information out to the community and to our larger customers, too, about what's going on.
And once it goes past council, it goes to a public hearing for the public service commission?
Nope,
No,
nope.
it doesn't? Not
Sewer
for-
rates don't have to go through that
Oh, I
process.
didn't
Once
know.
it goes through council, it can be implemented, and we can
All
inform
right.
people.
All right. Any more questions, comments? We have a nicely prepared motion, 17-6-2, sewer usage charge adjustment approval and recommendation to the city council. I'll entertain a motion to approve the motion.
Make a motion to approve motion 17-622.
Seconded.
Have a roll call vote, please.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Larrick?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Next, item 9, discussion recommendation on automated metering infrastructure, otherwise known as AMI. We've had several presentations this year. This is using current technology to to play something that's somewhat manual and is not very consistent, where people's bills kind of go up and down a lot. So, Paul, you want to go over this? Yeah, and Betsy, as I recall at the last meeting, we were prepared, we almost were going to make a recommendation, but Betsy wanted to do the financials. Is that
You
correct?
really wanted to do those.
Yeah, well, and I'll be just, really straight up, we're doing this slow. We want to make sure that people understand what this is and what we're doing, and then we wanted to make sure, and when I say we, I'm talking Betsy and I, and we've worked with WPPI and our vendor and lots of people. We want to make sure that our numbers are good, they're accurate, and, that we're presenting is the best numbers we can come up with, and it makes the most sense, and we really give you the complete package. This one, now, when we get through this one, if you've got a recommendation, this won't go to the council till July, because we want to make sure we've got a good presentation for them when we take it, for them to consider. And the other part is that if you've got ideas, suggestions, we want to have time to implement those. So I will go through this relatively quickly. I don't want to be too redundant in what we've discussed in previous meetings, but I certainly want to make sure that all your questions are answered and we're all on the same page. And I'll refer once again to the Ellers report, in that we were looking at, in water, a 10% increase in 15, and then 8 in 16, 9 in 17, et cetera. Once again, we haven't necessarily followed that particular formula, but just to give you a quick review, in January of 2015, we increased the rates 10%, and in January of 2017, 15%. So again, I think we're probably slightly lower than what we would have been doing. And I bring that up early because I want to make sure you understand that one of the things we want to discuss is the rate impact of doing something like this, because we are talking about, $1.24 million worth of meter improvements. So there's going to be some sort of impact. And I just want to make sure you understand where we're at financially in that case. So you see in the memo I put out that we divide this by all three utilities: wastewater, water, and electric. And it's not divided evenly by the three for two reasons. One is that the electric meters are slightly more expensive, and they're kind of the, if you will, the brains of the operation. The water meters have to talk to the electric meters, and then the electric meters are the ones that kind of talk through the system. The other part is that the electric meters can be a little more sophisticated. They're the item that we can have two-way communication with. We can with the water too, but in the case of the electric, we can actually disconnect remotely, reconnect remotely. So we have just a little more technology in the electric meters. So generally speaking, that meter is a little more expensive. It's somewhat difficult, as I show in the memo, to give you a precise rate impact. And you can see the four reasons that I've indicated there. There's a couple of others, and that is that we are doing a number of things at once. As you recall, we really started the idea, or got to the idea of the AMI, because we needed to find out what was going on in the water utility, where that water loss was coming from. So in most utilities, it's the electric meters that drive the installation of an AMI system. In our case, it's the water meters that are driving that, or the water usage that's driving that. So we are anticipating some savings yet. And I'll just quickly report right here that we did find another leak a couple of months ago, a significant leak that is reducing our usage by about 100,000 gallons a month. And so we keep looking for those to see if we can spot more of those. But finding those leaks, changing out old meters that are inaccurate, are all going to help with our revenue. And so when we try to determine a precise rate impact, we have to somehow figure out how to factor in there that we're actually going to be saving money. So I just want you to understand we're not going to give you absolute specific numbers, because there are some variables there. And overall, we think that the system will not only pay for itself, but it's got some benefits over and above the actual upfront cost.
I have a question on the memo.
Sure, please.
The water and sewer utility breakout is equal, but I'm thinking that the number of sewer customers is more than the number of water customers. So you know, the customer base is different, but the charge is equal. Can you help me with that?
Yeah, the difference isn't real significant, Mark. You're referring to like on the west side of the lake. Yeah, we're talking a difference of maybe 400 meters there, and it's all residential. We've got some locations in the city where there's 2 or 3 water meters. So really, from a simplicity standpoint, we decided to just split that cost 50/50. As we get into it, we may realize there's a difference, and we can allocate differently. But for these calculations, to keep it simple, we simply split it 50/50.
Is it correct that every place that there is a water meter, whether it's for sanitary sewer or for water, there is an electric meter for every one of those installations?
No,
No.
no, and the difference would be the mobile home parks.
Oh,
Yep, we've got a couple of mobile home parks that are primary water metered, if you will. So there's one meter that feeds the park, but all the trailers in the park would have an electric meter,
okay.
which we don't do anymore, by the way.
But in general, because the electric meters got the, I'll say, the better ability to reach the antenna, because it doesn't have to run off battery to do that.
You are correct.
So in 99 point, there's very few water meters without an associated electric meter, it sounds like. It's just those common water meters is what I think I heard you say.
You're correct. You are correct. And we've also, to that end, have a policy now that
We don't do it anymore.
we don't do that anymore. You've got to have an electric meter to have a water meter, and vice versa.
And the electric service area is larger than the water and sanitary sewer service area. There's no place where you,
Oh, right, yes, that would be correct.
Yeah.
Yep. Mhm.
So to piggyback on that, so we're doing all of like the primary metering to each individual customer. Are we doing any main metering so we can start to identify leaks down mains?
Not in this project, we're not.
Because you're looking at like a handful of larger meters that would do.
do some
that.
cities do that?
I don't know. You got me on that one. I will be checking that out, though. That's an excellent idea. Do you do that? Does Jefferson do that?
No, it's the opposite of industry. So industry starts with the big ones first and trickles down to the smaller ones, but your revenue is different too, so
Yeah, yeah.
you actually allocate by individual customer.
It's a good thought. We'll check it out. I mean, obviously, right now, we meter at the source, and then we meter at the user, and nothing in between.
And that's where all our leaks are.
Exactly right. Well, not necessarily.
Did I read right that we have the highest of the state for percent losses in our water system?
I don't know if that's the case, but I wouldn't be surprised. It's not a prize I want. We're not shooting for that.
I don't know. I was looking through the PSC and there's like, I forget what the number is, like 34 or 38%.
Yeah, I have seen, quite honestly, in some smaller communities, they get up in the 50s and 60s.
We're
You
the
know, we
highest
may
in the
be
state.
that one in our particular category. We're high, absolutely,
Yeah.
no doubt about it, and we're fighting like crazy to change that, but I hope we're not winning.
That's what I was hoping, that you could use some of the AMI infrastructure to do some of the mains to figure out some of those larger losses, like the 100,000 gallons a month.
Yeah, and that was actually on an individual service. Yeah, and it was obviously between the main and the meter.
Which you still wouldn't catch with the meter.
We wouldn't catch it with the meter, we catch it with pressure.
Do these monitor pressure too? It's fun to watch you guys like ping pong back and forth, by the way.
Not that I know of. Get all these difficult questions out, because then I can get into this.
Well, you know I want this too, so.
I'm just kidding. Those are things I never thought of. That's a very good question, too.
It's just you're putting in a lot of infrastructure and it's a really useful tool to use. I'd like to keep using it, but I also want you to keep pushing forward to get it done too, so.
I got
State
it.
of
I appreciate
influx.
that. And that's part of what we want to accomplish today, is to find out what you know and can help us with, too. So I appreciate that. So we'll see about the main metering, if it monitors pressure. The only thing I know is that it monitors low flow much better, so we'll be picking up low flow. So it obviously has the ability to feel pressure, so, or to know pressure if it's seeing that lower flow. But I'll check that out. Very good question. Anything else, or I'll move on here a little more? Okay, good. Okay, so then that brings us to the funding package, and again, that's in your memo, and I want to put up our cost sheet here, if I may. That's in your packet. So this is what we're working from to find our sources of funding. And it's working out that we have one for each utility.
Do you know what the name of this document is?
It was the
Lake
PDF.
Mills AMI estimated cost.
I'm sorry, Census AMI Migration Estimated Cost.
You're correct.
Like-
Lake Mills.
Yeah,
That's
got it.
what it's,
What you
the
get.
facility.
Oh, I'm sorry, I got you. I'm using paper.
Yeah.
And this, I think we showed you this last month, so it really hasn't changed. You'll see the assumptions on the bottom about, the number of meters. It may not be exactly right because that changes from month to month, but we're going with some standard assumptions here to put our numbers together. So, go ahead.
I'm glad to see you don't need a 5 or 10% contingency like we do on road projects?
Yeah, well, and just to knock engineers, they usually throw 12% in, I think. But, yeah, I'm trying it with 1% because even that scared me, so.
This is a very certain project.
Yeah, well, let's hope. Okay, so anyway, funding sources, again, 3 different sources because there's 3 different utilities. First of all, we estimate that there is enough funds in the wastewater balance to fund the project as we need dollars from it. I believe there's about $500,000 or $600,000 in that fund, which we have to keep there. And as you see, we need about 380,000.
So the build-out period for this is 3 years?
3
5?
years.
3 years.
Yeah, so we anticipate we can use existing funds on the wastewater side. On the water side, we anticipate a short-term borrowing for this year, and then when we bond for the projects on South Main Street and Mulberry in subsequent years, we'll include this in the bond. So we can amortize that amount over a maximum of 19 years?
We usually try to go shorter.
Or shorter, so that we can minimize the rate impact. And hopefully what the savings we're seeing over that period of time will offset the need for any rate increases. See where I'm going? Okay. And then on the electric side, because we're a member of WPPI, they give us access to a $500,000 maximum no-interest loan. And same type of situation, we can amortize that over 10 years, plus we've got some funds, some margin funds on the electric side. So we don't anticipate this causing a significant rate increase. There's no way I'm going to sit here and say that there will not be one because of this. Again, we're still talking about over $1 million of infrastructure here. But we think we've put together a financing package that will keep that to an absolute minimum. And if our predictions of savings work out the way we're predicting them, that impact will be absolutely minimal. I anticipate that perhaps the largest impact, if there is one, will be in the water department, and simply because that department just doesn't have a large margin. It doesn't have nearly the revenues of the other 2 departments. But that one also stands to get the most benefit by getting newer meters in, finding the leaks, et cetera.
So some of these leaks leak into the sewer system, and so there will be some benefit there, but we don't know if that's 20% or 80%.
Exactly right. Exactly right. And a great example is the leak that we found, the 100,000 a month, did not leak into the sewer system. We just found one on Mulberry where it all was going into the sewer system. So there's so many variables, I guess is what I'm saying, that I could put together a cost comparison that could make this thing look really good or really bad. But what I want to make sure you understand is that what Betsy and I are doing are looking at this very closely to make sure that any impact is as minimal as we can possibly make it.
And the other thing that, does it add to it for the water side if we start finding all these leaks, because now we gotta go and fix them all? Does that negate the savings that we would get out of it?
We tend to every once in a while have to make a judgment call on that. You know, the big one we found, actually the last 2 we found were significant enough that fixing them was worth it. If we find a pinhole and a trickle or something like that, then we have to weigh, what's the value of this, how much is it going to cost us? Typically, if we uncover it in the process of another project, we'll fix it. But we may, if we just got a leaky valve, we may allow that to leak for a little bit. Sometimes they'll seal themselves, or we'll come back after a while if we're going to be doing something else and seal it. So we make judgment calls on a pretty regular basis as to what's the value of fixing a leak. I will tell you that we're a little more proactive in fixing every leak we find right now. But as we get into this more, it may not be as cost effective as everyone may not be cost effective. Betsy, you got anything you want to add from your note?
The memo that I prepared was just giving you a basic information of what we were looking at for the financing, and basically telling you what Paul already had given you for information, but just kind of putting it in a different format. And like it says, as we make these decisions, if this goes to the council and it's approved, then we will move forward with the financing, and I need to come before you with the request for borrowing.
Thank you. That's a good point. It reminds me that the other thing we have to do is go to the PSC and request a certificate of authority on the electric side. We've received one for the water project, and that was in your packet. If you approve this and we move this forward tonight, then we will approach the PSC with a CA, certificate of authority, on the electric side, and they will go through their process to determine whether or not it's cost effective, and they'll give us an estimate on what they see as a rate impact also. The other thing I forgot to mention, when we did the WPPI loan, or as we're working through that, we had to justify the project through them based on energy conservation. And so we had to identify that the newer meters will allow instantaneous readout of energy so that customers can get a sense for what, when they're using their power. It helps with high bill complaints. Instead of having to wait literally 2 months to investigate why a person's bill was high for 1 month, we can now do it with data that's maybe 15 minutes old. So there's some energy conservation benefits to this also.
Any other questions, concerns? Okay. We also have a nicely prepared motion 17-6-3, automated metering infrastructure project approval and recommendation to the city council. I'll entertain a motion to approve this motion.
Motion to approve 1763.
Second.
A roll call vote, please, Heather.
Mr. Pickard?
Aye.
Mr. Lehrer?
Aye.
Mr. Temperley?
Aye.
Ms. Schmidt?
Aye.
Motion passed 4-0.
Thank you. This is pretty exciting, really, for us. This is a significant project. So what will happen now is, again, we'll take this to the council in July, but in the meantime, we will begin the process to get a CA from the PSC for the electric side of the work. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Item 10, recommendations for future agendas. Does anybody have anything worthy of an agenda item?
I probably won't be at the next meeting.
Okay. So far, I should be. So,
I should be as well.
all right. Item 11, adjournment. I get to bang this nice gavel and adjourn the meeting at 8:03. Thank you.